Pittsburgh Steelers fans, it is time once again for another edition of Know Your Enemy, the second time we can call it that for the 2021 season. My name is Michael Beck, deputy editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, joined as always, really. I guess Geoffrey had the week off last week, but welcoming him back in triumphant fashion. Geoffrey, Benedict, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right, Michael. I'm doing all right. Excited to get some more football.
Oh yeah, honestly, it's been a long 5-6 months. I'm definitely ready for another game. And as always, we do have a special guest joining us for the second time now, Brandon Gowton from Bleeding Green Nation. Brandon, how you doing tonight, sir?
Guys, doing great. Thanks for having me. Always good to talk to my friends from the other side of the Keystone State for that rare Eagles Steelers matchup this time in the preseason.
Yeah, and of course, that game kicking off Thursday night. It's always a big game when you're getting that Battle of Pennsylvania, but I'm curious your thoughts, Brandon. Does it really matter? It's a preseason game. Do players get up more because it is kind of that interstate rivalry, or is it still just a preseason game?
Yeah, I think it's still a preseason game. I don't think it means too much other than just the fact that these players are going through training camp. They've practiced together for now about 2 weeks. And they're probably looking forward to actually tackling, finally, and actually playing against other people instead of their own teammates. So I think that's the fun part of it.
How obviously the Steelers had the Hall of Fame game. This is the first preseason game for the Eagles. Do you expect it to be any different? Do you think that's a disadvantage or an advantage to either side?
It could be a little bit of advantage, I guess, for the Steelers, and just from that, they kind of have their rotations figured out. They're in a groove maybe a little bit. They have things going there already. From the Eagles, it's hard to know fully what to expect because, it's a new coaching staff here under Nick Sirianni, so we don't really know how he handles preseason typically, how often he's going to use the starters and everything. My guess, just based on how conservative they've been with their practice times, they've had some really short practices in training camp, is that they're going to play it safe and based on how many injuries they've had, but I really don't know. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Stupid questions popping to my mind, but I'm curious your thoughts on this, Brandon. Just the nature of the game, of course, kind of the Battle of Pennsylvania. Really, it is a yearly preseason matchup. Would you be interested at all, how they do it in college sports, where the rivalry games have some sort of trophy involved? Do you think that might try to boost the game if it was if you gave the game a name? Would it be worth more, even though it's a preseason? Because I don't know, you make a key into a stone because it's the Keystone State, and I'm just a creative genius. But would that make it mean anything more? Or is that just a silly idea?
So actually got a question, from our good friend Jeff Hartman here, from Behind the Steel Curtain. He was asking me, why do the Steelers always lose when they come to Philadelphia? It's been
always
since 1965, since the Steelers have won in Philly. And my theory on it is that, I think it's kind of just the luck of the draw in that, when Pittsburgh Steelers came to town in 2016, the Eagles were really hot with Carson Wentz at the start of that season. They came in 2008. Darren Sproles game. They came in 2008 when the Eagles went to the NFC Championship game that year and lost to the Cardinals. So they've come in some kind of good years or good times for the Eagles. So maybe it's some of that. Could also be maybe that during the regular season, maybe it's that this team doesn't overlook the Steelers, because they've had more success and they're in the same state and they're we don't want to lose to that team. I don't think there's a rivalry. It's not really fair to say that between these two teams, but I think there's something to that. And the way I look at it, it's the Eagles Steelers to me is always about Wawa versus Sheets supremacy here, and obviously the Eagles have to stand up and defend the glory of Wawa.
That's what we're going to name the game, the Wawa Sheets Bowl.
Yes,
or Sheets Wawa, depending who won the year before.
That's okay. All right. Wow. How is the starting quarterback situation looking in Philadelphia? Just hard cut there. That just threw me way off. How is the transition away from Carson Wentz going, and how does Philadelphia feel about this whole just suddenly boom, we're done with Wentz?
Yeah, well, I can tell you it's not like going to Wawa and getting on the touchscreen and getting your favorite order. It's not quite that simple. It's a complicated situation where Carson Wentz is gone, and a lot of people are pretty happy / feeling fine about that. But I think there's a big question mark now. I don't think it was about you can't get rid of Carson Wentz because you only have Jalen Hurts here. That's not the decision that needed to be made. Carson Wentz needed to be moved on from because I think there are very real concerns about his stubbornness when it comes to kind of fixing him. And quite frankly, he didn't want to be here. That much is apparent. He wanted to go to the Colts. You can't have a franchise quarterback who doesn't want to be here. I guess unless you're the Packers and you're Aaron Rodgers and you find a way to make it work. Carson Wentz was not Aaron Rodgers last year. He was quite literally the worst starting quarterback in the NFL, or at least, very least, one of them. So Jalen Hurts is here. And speaking of worst quarterbacks in the NFL, I think entering the season, Jalen Hurts belongs in that conversation. That's not to say he can't get better and prove people wrong. And he's only 20. He just turned 23 years old. So I think there's room for him to grow. But right now, as a starting point, he was really bad last year in terms of accuracy, and he has a lot to prove. So I think what he's shown in training camp, I don't really see a lot of signs that this is a night and day player, but I will allow that his game, him being as mobile as he is, that might not be showcased, as good as it will be in real games as it is kind of not being able to be featured in practice. So I'm not out on Jalen Hurts, but I think there are a lot of questions to answer.
Can I follow up on that real quick? If Jalen Hurts is belongs in the category of worst starting quarterbacks to start the season, if you had the option of taking Dwayne Haskins, Mason Rudolph, Josh Dobbs, just take all three of them versus Jalen Hurts, which one would you take?
I would take Jalen Hurts just because of the upside, just because of the potential. I've never been a Haskins guy. I don't get it. Maybe he's doing better out there in Pittsburgh. I haven't kept track of that. I just never really saw it with him at all. Never been a Dwayne Haskins guy, just from the potential alone and the rushing mobility. At the very least, I think we can say from a rushing perspective, Jalen Hurts is probably maybe the second best rushing quarterback in the NFL behind Lamar Jackson, or, maybe top three if we're putting Kyler Murray up there. So at the very least, I think he has that going for him. Whereas with Dwayne Haskins and any of those other guys, there's just nothing there that really makes me feel like anything that I want to see from them.
Just to throw a point out there about Dwayne Haskins, Steelers fans adore him because he's not Mason Rudolph. If Rudolph were to throw two touchdowns and Haskins threw 2 picks, and that was their stat line for Thursday night, people would still tell you Haskins had a better game. That's just the way it's going to be because of the disdain.
He throws such beautiful practice balls. Dwayne Haskins, just beautiful downfield balls in practice. Gotta love that.
Oh yeah, that's what really matters. But of course, that is a position battle for the Steelers. And watching preseason action, oftentimes fan bases don't know what's kind of going on the other side. Can you break down some of the bigger position battles that Philadelphia has going on right now and stuff that Steelers fans should watch out for on the other side of the ball?
Yeah, so there was a battle in theory heading into training camp at left tackle between Jordan Mailata, who was a really interesting story for you guys who don't know. This is a dude who never played football in his life until I think it was actually against the Steelers a couple years ago. It was his first preseason game. He played in rugby league in Australia. Now he's worked his way up over the years. He's developed, and basically he's the guy there. He's had a great training camp, and Andre Dillard now, who is the other competitor, has been looking terrible in training camp, and he's hurt. So that's kind of out of sight, out of mind now for that spot. But some of the other spots to look out for, I mean, I'll just give you a couple of players like Quez Watkins, number 16, in I would say midnight green, but I'm guessing the Eagles are going to wear their all white jerseys, so they usually do in the summer. That's a player to watch out for. I think he's been the best wide receiver in Eagles training camp. Now, mind you, Devontae Smith hasn't been practicing because he's been hurt, and I just think he's looked better than even 2020 first round pick Jalen Reagor. So that's a guy to watch out for. If you see him make a big play against the Steelers defense, or the backups probably, that shouldn't be a total shock. Just remember you heard that name here. And then from the starters, and it's not necessarily a battle in that I think a lot of these guys are going to get playing time, but Josh Sweat, number 94, and Derek Barnett, number 96, And a really interesting situation for them because they're both in contract years. Derek Barnett, a former first-round pick in 2017, Josh Sweat, a fourth-round pick in 2018, and Josh Sweat's just having a monster training camp. He's living in the backfield. I think if he's playing early on, he could cause some disruption for the Steelers. And I think his great offseason is overshadowing what Derek Barnett has done. He's also been pretty good. Not quite as dominant as Josh Sweat, but still pretty good too. So those are the numbers I'd watch out for, number 16, number 94, and number 96.
Yeah, Josh Sweat had a pretty good game against Pittsburgh last season too. One of the wide receivers you have, JJ Arcega-Whiteside, is a guy that Steeler fans were really high on going into that draft. How has he done for Philadelphia? I know he hasn't had the greatest. How is he looking going into this season?
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to know what to make of JJ because he does this every year. At least he has the past few years where he looks good in training camp. And I even kind of bought into last year, like, all right, he turned the corner. He seemed like, just listening to him talk in interviews, he seemed like he was a little bit like mentally different and everything. And he had another good camp. But then the regular season rolled around. And I think except for that long pass in the Steelers game, which is like right before the end of the first half, which it didn't even matter anyway because it didn't set up anything. It was a nice catch, like in a vacuum, but not in like it didn't matter in the actual game. Like JJ's kind of looked good again in camp, not great, but kind of good. He's kind of working in the slot more now, which it seems like the cure-all. When a receiver isn't good, you just move him into the slot. So I honestly don't think he deserves to make the Eagles roster. So maybe he'll be out there for the Steelers to claim if they want him or something. But the Eagles might just try to hold on to him because he was a second-round pick from a couple years ago. They might just not be ready to give up on him quite yet. But to me, I'm not seeing anything that makes him like a must-keep kind of player.
That's pretty interesting. Now, I'm curious your thoughts on this entirely new coaching staff as well. From what you see, are the players buying in? Is this a complete takeover, whole new culture? Is everything kind of adjusting the way you'd hope it to be going at this point?
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't think the Eagles were bad last season necessarily because they like had a bad, culture. And I don't think Doug Peterson, and I think a lot of Eagles fans would agree with this, was like the biggest reason why the team was bad. I think one of the biggest reasons why the team was bad is because the quarterback fell off a cliff and Wentz was terrible. And that is not just because the coaching staff was bad. A lot of that was his own fault, his own doing. And I think a lot of blame should go on the front office. And the front office hasn't had the answer for that because Harry Roseman is still very much here and in charge. But looking at what the new coaching staff has brought, I think the goal, in theory at least, is to kind of get more out of some of these underachieving players. And the thought is, okay, we need to focus more on player development and get these young guys up to speed. And if we can do that, maybe we actually have more talent than we think we do. We just have to develop it better. The pieces are here. Now, I don't fully buy that because I think the roster needs work, but I think it is apparent that this coaching staff is really trying to take the time with young players. For example, Nick Sirianni really chewed out Jalen Reagor last week in practice after he had a really bad rep. But then, next day he comes back, he's a really good play, and he's right there to, kind of give some, show him some love. So I think that's really been the focus, trying to get more out of these young players. And I think this Eagles season as a whole is not like a Super Bowl or bust season, especially coming off this bad year. Admittedly, Geoffrey Lurie, the Eagles owner, has said this is a, quote, real transition period. And he compared it to where the Eagles were in 2016 when it was Carson Wentz's year and Doug Peterson's first year. So I think this season's kind of about finding answers in terms of what is our core? Who are our long-term players? And then kind of hopefully having a kind of a good season to take that and transition into 2021 and then start to really go all in and start really building this thing up.
You talked about them focusing on developing the younger guys and getting them going. And the first two draft picks you had this year haven't played much at all. What are your thoughts on where Devonta Smith and Landon Dickerson are going to be this season even?
Yeah, so with Devonta, I think he's going to be awesome. I think he's going to be really good. I really wanted the Eagles to draft him. He was my number one target realistically. And it's unfortunate that he's been, hampered by injury here, but he was doing some rehab work on a side field just yesterday. So I think that's, portends well to him coming back within a week or two, which is the original timeline. So I think he'll be back and I think he'll be fine. And honestly, I think he's going to be the big volume target in this offense, assuming he is healthy and he's not struggling. I think he's just too talented to not really excel from the jump. And then when it comes to Landon Dickerson, it's weird because the Eagles pretty much said they did not see this as a redshirt year for him. Now, he's been on the PUP list all of training camp so far, and it's unclear if he's going to be really ready. Actually, he's on the NFI list, but same thing basically. It's unclear like when he's going to be activated from that. Like, there's really been no talk at all. So, but even if he is healthy, I mean, he's missed all of training camp, and there isn't an obvious starting offensive line position for him. So I guess he might be your top interior backup, but those lack of reps make me wonder if it is, and this actually might just kind of be a redshirt year for him, unless it's like last year when the Eagles were just so devastated by offensive line injuries, they had to use 14 different combinations in 16 games.
Yeah, that's not going to do any team any service. But another player that's plays beside the offensive line I want to bring up, Zach Ertz. Seems like this offseason there's been a handshake deal in place with Buffalo twice, Indy perhaps at one point, talks of a holdout. Now all of a sudden he is at camp, seems like he's going to be on the team. What's going on with that situation? Do you expect him to be on the roster throughout this whole year, or is Zach Ertz happy? Like, what's going on with that?
Well, I definitely don't think he's happy, but he is here, and he still looks good. My thinking is that the Eagles and Zach Ertz kind of came to maybe a reluctant agreement on Zach Ertz's part, but it's like, hey, come into training camp, have a good camp. There'll be reports of how you're looking good still, and we'll make sure to talk about how great you've been as a leader and everything, and speak glowingly of you, and we'll try to boost your trade value. And then that way you do that, then someone will come trading for you, and then you can go free. So I think maybe that's the thinking there. I think it's possible the Eagles might just be willing to keep him, but I think that's kind of foolish because if they trade him, they can clear $8.5 million off of their cap. And I think they should, because Zach Ertz is clearly not going to be back next season. They're not signing him to an extension. Or if they are, then they're giving a big money extension to an older player while also definitely not re-signing Dallas Goedert, who they have waiting in the wings. So I feel like Zach Ertz can't be here. It doesn't make long-term sense. He might make the Eagles better in the short term, but it's not an all-in kind of year. So I just don't think it makes sense to do that. And also you need to see what you have in Dallas Goedert as like the number one volume target in the offense, at least as a tight end, before you pay him a big money contract, because he's a free agent after this season. So I feel like Zach Ertz can't be here just from like a logical perspective, but I cannot rule out Howard Roseman like being stubborn and being like, well, we're not getting value for him, so we're just going to keep him. I just think that would be a big mistake.
Speaking of another a target from last season, got a little bit of volume targets against the Steelers. Travis Fulgham. Has he turned out to be anything, or was that just a flash in the pan at the Steelers' expense?
Yeah, that was interesting, right? He did pretty well against you guys. I think Steven Nelson, too. He had a couple wins against him, who is obviously now in Philly as well. So, Travis Fulgham is kind of a mystery because he had a 4-week stretch last season, including the game against the Steelers, where he led the NFL in receiving yards. Like, that is crazy. This is a guy who was a former 6th-round pick, and the Lions cut him, and then the Packers cut him, and then the Eagles picked him up after that. And at the time they picked him up, like, he's wearing a single-digit number in training camp. You're thinking this guy is just a camp body, and then all of a sudden, again, he's leading the NFL in receiving for a little stretch for a quarter of the season. Like, that's nuts. And then obviously after that, he kind of fell out of favor. I think there were kind of concerns about his work ethic and everything, and that's kind of been touched on. So I think the Eagles have been really trying to light a fire under him in training camp. I've seen Nick Sirianni kind of get up in his face and kind of be really fiery and passionate with him. I think he's trying to get the most out of him. I've seen some good things from Travis Fulgham in training camp, but I've seen just a little bit too much inconsistency too with these drops and everything. So I buy that he has talent. It's just a matter of, like, is he going to be able to put it all together? Does he have the drive? Does he have the focus? I think there's a chance, but really not going to be able to see that until we see the regular season games.
So you mentioned Steven Nelson there, of course, former Steeler, now Philadelphia Eagle. I'm curious how he's looking at camp. Does he look like the guy that he was maybe with the Steelers in 2019, or does he look legit, or what do you have with him?
I would say he's been basically as you guys have advertised. He's a quality number 2 starting cornerback, which is what the Eagles signed him to be. You know, obviously they have Darius Slay as their number 1. and they had a big gaping hole in their roster after that. So Nelson fits right in. He's gotten beat sometimes on some deep throws, especially, but he's knocked away a lot of passes as well for pass breakups. So I've seen some good things. I've seen some bad things. I've seen a lot more. I'd say more good things. And I have a level of confidence about him being like a solid starter at corner for the Eagles, especially what they paid to get him. It's only like, I think it was like $4 million or so deal, like really pretty reasonable deal for what they got him at. So yeah, I think he's going to be a solid player. Like clearly not a Pro Bowl or anything special kind of talent, but just a solid starter.
Yeah, that is a position that I'm a guy that I'm really looking forward to seeing how he does this season, largely because you guys brought in Anthony Harris at free safety, who is a more aggressive free safety and better attacking forward in the play, which is very similar to what he had in Minkah Fitzpatrick as a safety with the Steelers. How is Anthony Harris fitting in that defense, and how good of a free safety do you think he is?
Yeah, it's a really – so the Nelson and Anthony Harris signings for the Eagles are almost similar in that, like, they didn't have the best seasons last year, but they were good before that, and especially in as recently as 2019. So the Eagles are kind of taking these one-year flyers on them, maybe seeing if they can kind of get back to that form. And with Harris, we haven't really seen a ton out of him in training camp in terms of highlight plays and everything, but that might be a good thing. He's just in good position all the time. I'm not really seeing him get beat a lot. He's had a couple big hits, even though the Eagles aren't really tackling to the ground, just kind of in thud. So he's popped here and there. He had a diving pass breakup, I think, earlier this week. So I've seen a little bit out of him. Haven't seen a ton of great things, but I think there's reason to believe that he could have a pretty good season. Just again, if he can get back to that 2019 form when I believe he led the NFL interceptions, at least for safeties at 6. He got the franchise tag from the Vikings, and everyone thought he might get that big deal in free agency if he didn't get tagged. So I think there's some reason to believe he can kind of bounce back a little bit, especially because the Eagles have a new defensive coordinator in Jonathan Gannon, who comes from that Minnesota Vikings background and also has kind of just like a track record of getting more out of less, or kind of revitalizing defensive backs' careers. I mean, you look at Xavier Rhodes last year with the Colts, and Chris Ballard, Indy's GM, specifically credited Jonathan Gannon, who was the Colts defensive backs coach at the time, for really getting Xavier Rhodes back on track after he got cut by the Vikings, and he was really bad for Minnesota there. So I think there's reason to believe that Gannon can kind of get Anthony Harris back on track here.
One of the things that we've kind of touched on a few times is the Eagles, really their injury problems stretching back to last season, which decimated the team really. And really, it's kind of continued a little bit into training camp this year, too. Of course, like Geoffrey mentioned, the top 2 picks battling some injury. And, of course, there are some other guys that have been battling stuff as well. Is this just a weird trend, a snake bitten? I know we mentioned earlier about something being in the water, or perhaps there's just a strength and conditioning coach that's sabotaging the team. But what's going on with that? How can this team just not manage to stay healthy?
I wish I had the answer, guys. I really did. I think part of it's been a mix of things. I think there's been some bad luck involved, obviously. If you look at adjusted games lost by Football Outsiders, the Eagles have kind of been on the high end of that spectrum, just in terms of being bad. And not just, it hasn't just been about suffering a lot of different injuries. The Eagles have been especially hit hard at times, at the same position. It's like they're getting decimated on the offensive line, like I said they were last year, or at cornerback. So sometimes when you have them spread out, you kind of make do. But when you're clustering those injuries together, that's when it becomes especially tough. So I think it's been some of that, some of the bad luck. It's been some of that. I don't know. It's weird to say medical staff, because we just don't know exactly what that means or who to assign blame to. But and they've changed it. They've changed their medical staff these past couple seasons, and they've actually hired people from the Vikings, who had one of the healthiest teams in the league a couple of seasons ago when they made this hire, and the Rams, who've also been up there consistently kind of year after year. So they've even brought in people from healthy organizations to kind of make this thing better. But and this, like you said, in training camp this year, they've gone with shorter practices, which I think is another effort to try to make sure they can just stay as healthy as possible. So they're trying things. I will give them credit. They're not just doing the same thing and butting their head into the wall and expecting different results. They are trying things, but I guess they're just not lucky.
So the Eagles, one of their strengths, you talked earlier about Barnett and Sweat, is on the defensive line, where they have former Steeler Javon Hargrave, And of course, you've got Fletcher Cox. How is that defensive line doing? And especially the young defensive tackle you drafted this season. I was a big fan of his. Always look at those guys that have crazy athletic testing. How's he looking?
Yeah, so I think the defensive line has the potential to be kind of like the strength of the team. I think the Eagles' defense has a chance to be like an above-average unit, maybe even back end of the top 10, maybe at the very most, like everything goes right, top 5. I think there's more hope for the defense than there is the offense, and part of it is because of the defensive line, where you have Brandon Graham, and you know what you're going to get in him. He was just a Pro Bowler last year, a very consistent player, not an elite edge rusher, but a very, very good one. You have Josh Sweat, who we talked about, is having a great training camp. I think he's going to get double-digit sacks this year, the way he's looking in practice. You have Derek Barnett, who I think is going to rotate in. You'll sign Ryan Kerrigan. I think that's a pretty solid signing for them to add to the rotation, considering Ryan Kerrigan has killed them for years. And then, on the inside, Fletcher Cox still looks pretty good. I don't know that he's like elite peak form Fletcher Cox anymore. I have questions about that, but he's still going to be a very good player. And then Javon Hargrave, who I see people are asking about in the chat here, he's looking pretty good. And he came into training camp hurt last year and then into the regular season hurt. I think he didn't even play week 1. And it kind of took him time to catch up from that injury. We didn't really even see him making an impact until later in the season when he finally got healthy. So I think we could see him make an impact this year from the jump now that he is healthy and he's playing next to Fletcher Cox and he's, has all this defensive line talent to work with. And then you mentioned, Geoff, there, Milton Williams, who actually has kind of been interestingly getting looks at defensive end in addition to defensive tackles. They're kind of moving him around using some different kind of 4-3, 3-4 looks at the front of their defense. So it's kind of be interesting to see how he fits in here. There's been some nice moments with him getting interior pressure and disruption and everything. I don't think he's going to take on this major role, especially because there's already so many other veterans ahead of him, but he could be kind of a nice role player in year 1.
So, especially bringing up all those names along the defensive front, in this matchup specifically, we all know the Steelers kind of issues along their offensive line, especially as we kind of get into those depth situations. And of course, the Eagles are really deep on their defensive line. Do you anticipate this could be like a very long game for the Steelers quarterbacks? Could they be running for their lives a little bit, especially as we get to later on in the game?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, because even some of these younger guys that the Eagles have, like you look at a Teron Jackson who they drafted this year, like he's been showing some things, especially on one-on-ones in camp. So, and in general, I think there's a dearth of offensive line talent in the NFL, more so than there is when it comes to defensive line. So I think just from that perspective, the defensive line kind of has an edge. And I think the fact, too, that they're going to be rotating can kind of make things tough for the Steelers. Another big factor that I think, again, in a game that doesn't matter, but could work in the Eagles' favor, is they have a somewhat experienced third-string quarterback, not to mention backup in Joe Flacco, but in third string in Nick Mullins, who obviously, has experience starting for the 49ers and everything. So but then again, the Steelers have backups too who have played. So for a preseason game, it's interesting because these quarterbacks are like quarterbacks who've actually played in the NFL or have been around for a while and have experience.
Just to cut in, I'm just excited to see Joe Flacco on the field again. Just hoping our edge rushers can take him down just at least one more time before he hangs him up, just for old time's sake. But Geoffrey, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think when people were talking about they were surprised Ben Roethlisberger is not even gonna play in this game, and I was like, it's in Philadelphia. Have you seen their defensive line? I wouldn't put Ben Roethlisberger in there. Yeah, yeah. When he goes to Philly, it's terrible. Is there anywhere where you're looking at the matchup between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and you're saying this is a great test for someone in Philadelphia? This is a great test of what Philadelphia has facing against Pittsburgh.
Well, I'm interested to see, even if it might be a short amount of time, Jalen Ertz and the starting offense, which is coming off what some Eagles reporters have described as the worst offensive practice they've ever seen over the weekend. And I think, again, Jalen Hurts has had an up and down training camp. I'm interested to see how he does against the Steelers defense. Now, I know all your starters might not be playing and everything, but still, there's a lot of talent on that defense. It's one of the best defenses in the NFL last year, and it's a tough unit. And I think for Jalen Hurts to go up against them is a test worth seeing. And also, I wonder if the Eagles offense and Jalen Hurts kind of struggles and Nick Sirianni kind of might keep them in the game, especially if the Steelers pull out their starters and it's like really all backup defense, I almost wonder like if Sirianni might keep him in to see how like he does against the backups and maybe try to like build some confidence playing against lesser competition. So that's one of the biggest things I want to see.
One more quick question for me before we get you out of here, Brandon. Are you at all kind of concerned about losing an extra first-round pick next year because of old Carson Wentz's foot injury? Just one more kick in the pants from the old quarterback?
Well, we'll see. You know, there's talk now that he might be. I mean, I just have a hard time believing he's going to be ready for week 1 when I just saw a report today that said, like, this kind of injury could take, like, 2 to 3 months to recover from. So week 1 seems a little generous to me. But, yeah, I mean, it's a big deal. It's funny to me. Not funny and, like, I'm laughing. But it's interesting how Carson Wentz, the former Eagles quarterback, his availability could impact who the Eagles get next because the Eagles probably want to take that pick that they can get from the Colts, potentially a first, and the pick that they have from the Miami Dolphins, which is guaranteed to be a first next year. And then they have their own first-round pick. And obviously, we've all heard the rumors about Deshaun Watson. Beyond that, there's been rumors about Russell Wilson. So, and I think the Eagles are not going to have a very long leash with Jalen Hurts. I think Hurts has a very high bar to clear. I think if there is a shred of doubt about Jalen Hurts after this season, a single shred, they are going to pivot instantly because they are obsessed with finding their new franchise quarterback. They're not going to settle for less, especially when they have those assets to make a big move. So, yeah, I think they're really hoping that does turn out to be a first so they can get, whether it's a Watson or a Wilson or whoever it is.
Perfect. Now, before you go, is there anything you want to plug on your way out?
Yeah, you can check out bleedinggreennation.com for all your Philadelphia Eagles coverage, in addition to Behind the Steel Curtain. Maybe, if the Eagles lose, you can, see maybe Philly fans melting down. If that's fun to you, you can enjoy that. Or just, just get some perspective, just different perspective. So, yeah, definitely check that out. I'm actually going to have a Q&A with Geoff, who I mentioned earlier, up on the site tomorrow morning, Thursday morning. So we sent some questions back and forth. My answers will also be on BTSC, so you can check that out. You can follow me on Twitter at Brandon Gowton. You can check out Bleeding Green Nation's podcast, which is Bleeding Green Nation podcast feed. Like you have your own podcast feed here. So that's about it. Oh, SB Nation NFL show too. Obviously, as we are all part of SB Nation. Check out the SB Nation NFL show, which covers every team, including the Steelers. Sometimes we talk about them. Beautiful stuff. Hey, the number 1 and number 2 podcast across the SB Nation platform. So got to throw that out there too. So once again, thank you for joining us, Brandon. Have a great night. Thanks, guys. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Brandon Lee Gowton from Bleeding Green Nation. So if you are watching on YouTube or Facebook, just sit tight. We will bring you back with the all Steelers content for the second half of the show, so we'll be back with that in a moment. If you're listening on a podcast platform, you can switch over to part 2 right now. Pittsburgh Steelers fans, it is time for the second half of Know Your Enemy. My name is Michael Beck, joined by Geoffrey, Benedict, as always on these Wednesday nights, or whatever you happen to be listening to the show. Of course, the first half of the show, breaking down Thursday's matchup, the Steelers' second preseason game. Geoffrey, I didn't have you here last week to break down the Steelers-Cowboys Hall of Fame game. I'm curious your initial thoughts on the Steelers' first official action of the 2021 season.
It was all right. I wasn't thrilled with much of the offense. Like
a lot of backups.
Yeah, Najee Harris looked good. Like the passing game really didn't get going. You had that one big shot to Claypool, but everything was just kind of blah until you got later into the game. Like we really didn't move the ball. We really didn't do much. And on defense, there were a few little highlights here and there. I thought I really enjoyed seeing Trey Norwood play well at safety. Other than that, there really wasn't much in that game. It was kind of I'm always a huge preseason fan. I love watching those depth guys play, and this one was kind of blah to me. I don't know. I wasn't as good of a preseason game as I like usually.
I guess to be fair, of course, the first preseason game we've seen in 2 years now. It's sloppy. It's sloppy football. It's backups. It's a brand new offense. It's guys that have never played in the league before. So I can understand the sloppiness of it. And really, when you watch every single team open up their preseason action this week, and if you're a sports bettor, you're going to look at those unders. like those total points that the bettors kind of guess that both teams will combine to score more of. And it's almost unanimous in the preseason where every team scores under because they're just not clicking. The offenses aren't ready. Even the defenses get burnt, but then it's a bend don't break thing in the red zone because that's just not polished. So from that perspective, I can understand why they struggled. Would you kind of expect this game against Philadelphia for them to be? I'm not saying a perfect shined up kind of team, but would you expect them to be a little bit better from that first game?
I am very interested to see that. I am expecting a nightmare because we are playing in Philadelphia, and every single time we play in Philly, we play terribly. So I'm expecting that to continue for it to just be the Steelers playing bad. But then it's Ben Roethlisberger in Philadelphia has been the recent story. The last 2 times he's been there, it's just been terrible.
It's getting beat up.
maybe like a Dwayne Haskins, who's obviously played in Philadelphia before. So I think maybe that could save the day, but I don't expect much. I was kind of disappointed. There was a lot of moving parts to the Matt Canada offense, a lot of the motion I wanted to see, but no one was taking shots. And when they were, it just wasn't – people weren't completing them. I know, we didn't have the main receivers. I know we just had Claypool out there. But, man, I want to see Mason taking shots downfield. I want to see Dwayne Haskins taking shots downfield. I want to see people taking these chances.
I'm pretty sure that's what everyone across behind the steel curtain is talking about, the lack of shots in the first game, and specifically the lack of shots in the middle of the field. Like, it seemed like those deep balls were just down the sideline, no one working the post, no one even working like an inside slant that just went over 10 yards. Those routes just seem to like either not be run or just kind of been ignored completely. Do you think that's a scheme thing? Is that something we can kind of expect from Matt Canada's offense, or is that just it's week 1 of the preseason?
Oh, I hope it's not something to expect from Matt Canada's offense, because that's what we got from Randy Fichtner, and it was terrible. It just doesn't work. You have to work the middle of the field, because I think it's partly that whole like we're going to take what the defense gives us. Well, of course, the defense is going to give you the lowest percentage shots. They're going to give you the least valuable routes. They'll let you throw a 2-yard pass. No one cares if you throw a 2-yard pass and complete it and get tackled. It's 2nd and 8, and defense is okay with that. If you're chucking low percentage, shots down the sideline, teams will give that to you. Defenses will give that to you. So we have to find ways to work the middle of the field. Matt Canada has done that in the past. I expect he will. I just don't know if we'll see that in the preseason. But I do want to see quarterbacks take those shots, not just look them off. Take those shots.
Kind of before we get into the news of really the past week here since the game, and kind of to put a bow on that last week's game, I feel like I have to bring up Presley Harvin III, possibly the greatest punt I've ever seen from a Pittsburgh Steeler ever, and it came in week 0 of the preseason, the triple doink on the 1-yard line. Is that competition over? Did that one game to you? Do you just say like, well, Jordan Berry don't even bother getting back on the bus, or do we have the punter, or is there still something we need to see here?
Yeah, he's got to be the punter. Not only were they really good punts, the last punt where you forced a fumble, they called it a line drive. His kick coverage was 8 yards behind it when it hit the ground. It was a 43-yard punt. They were already they were down there. That's not a line drive. He didn't outkick his coverage. And the way that ball bounced, I hate that we can't get better film angles than the broadcast angle right now, because I so want to know how he held that ball before he kicked it, because the whole thing with punting is if you have to watch how they hold the ball in their hands and they drop it, because 2 of them were clearly drop punts, which is the second one they were bounced on the line. They just call it a drop punt, and that's where it spins. You spin it so that when it hits, it doesn't go forward. That shot he hit was incredible. Like
you hold it like this instead of north-south. You hold the ball sideways and hit it like a down angle.
Yeah, you kind of down angle it and a little sideways. And then there's the banana kick, which he actually kicked. That's a rugby-style kick. The one that bounced and went sideways out of bounds. That was a great one. I loved that. That's my favorite kick I've ever seen. That was 47 yards, I believe, downfield. And the gunner passed the 15-yard line a full second before the ball hit the 15-yard line. Like, that's the kind of hang time we're talking about. If you can kick a 47-yard punt and the gunner is there a second before the ball gets there, who can return that? Like, you can't return that. And then it bounced sideways out of bounds. It was a banana kick, which is not an easy kick to hit. And he hit it with that much hang time at the 10-yard and bounced it out at the 11-yard line. This guy's amazing. And I wish I knew what that last kick was. I don't know what kind of punt it was. You couldn't see, but the way it looked like it hit is it's going like this way. But the nose almost has to be under the ball for it to hit and
like
bounce.
An onside kick, really. That's what it looked like.
It bounced straight on a line. It wasn't like end over end. It hit and went straight, like boom, like a rocket, and towards the guy's shins. I don't know what that is. Like, I love following the punting a little bit because I was a goalie. I can punt. But that one, how do you get a ball to do that? I don't know if it was a weird variation on a drive. I don't know what he did. That was a fabulous punt. I can't wait. I'm excited to see this week. Partly because they've been writing up about the Philadelphia Eagles have had trouble fielding punts in practice. They've got some punts in practice, and I'm like, let's go, man. Let's go.
The legend.
He's got 4 great punts and no returns yet. Let's do it another time. Let's get another turnover.
I know we've already done 6 minutes on punting, but genuinely the Steelers have never had a good punter. And like honestly, it makes it exciting. And like, it's going to sound so stupid, but I'm excited every time the punt team takes the field now. Like, I'm genuinely like locked in. Oh, what is Big Press going to do this time? Now it's must-watch football. Like, what is this? Where did this come from? Like, are you excited for a punter? Like, because I am physically excited to watch a giant number 6 trot onto the field, bomb a punt, and make someone look stupid. Like, am I blowing this out of proportion, or is this something we should be excited about?
Oh, I'm excited for it. I am very excited. I'm a big punting fan. I was huge on Daniel Sepulveda, and he wasn't anything close to what this guy can do. If people remember when Sam Koch and the Ravens, and he kind of reinvented himself, there's videos out there you can watch where they talk about Antonio Brown. I think it was like 2012, 2013, somewhere in there, when he had all those punt returns for a touchdown, and they won a game just by kicking it away from AB and making him struggle to get the ball with all kinds of different styles of kicks, all these different kicks that he had practiced but had never actually kicked in a game because they're like, no, just do the normal punts in game. We don't want to do crazy stuff. And they started just kicking all these bizarre punts, and AB didn't even know what to do with them. He hadn't seen them before. We have that guy now. Like, we have that guy. He's got an absolute cannon of a leg. His kicking form is amazing. He's got those long arms. I just like looking how low his hand is when he drops the ball to his foot. He almost like sets it on his foot. It's amazing. He's great. I could talk about him for way too long.
I think we've already crossed that line. Last thought on this before we move on, because there's stuff we need to talk about. Presley Harvin, man, like, I feel like if we had this kind of punting talent on the team the last 5 years, the Steelers would have more wins. Like, legitimately, if teams had worse field position with our defense, who knows what the sky's the limit of, but how many shanks have we seen over the years where a team has a 40-yard field to work with when they should be trying to run 80 yards? Like, I think it's a big change here. While Geoffrey's headphones
I'm sorry, Michael. I just lost my headphones. Let me find some backup here.
He didn't hear me mention that. I heard that exact. I saw him go offline. Anywho, before we get Geoffrey back online here, I do want to mention kind of the big news of the week, of course, kind of the confirmation that TJ Watt isn't injured, but he is sitting out of those contact drills to kind of just save himself for these contract negotiations. And there's been a lot of talk really today through Steelers Nation about TJ Watt and his deal and what the team should do. So, Geoffrey, I'm kind of interested in your thoughts here on the TJ Watt extension. To me, I think it'd be a no-brainer. You get it done now, so you don't have to worry in future years about the cap going up, meaning Watt's getting a bigger percentage. having to negotiate a deal after Nick Bosa does his, because he'll reset the market, and then all of a sudden you got to pay Watt more again, because that's how it works. Do you agree with that? Do you need to pay TJ Watt here now, get it out of the way? Or are you someone that's a little more kind of comfortable with not getting it done, perhaps slapping a franchise tag on him?
Well, the Steelers have promoted TJ Watt as the best defensive player in football. Like, whether or not the league has agreed with them and given him a Defensive Player of the Year award is irrelevant. The Steelers have stated he's the best guy, right? They have designed this defense to work for him. So much of their defense is built around what TJ Watt can do now. You can't let him go, right? You can't do that. And people will be like, oh, you can't give. Well, that's how players get leverage. When you're that good, you determine how much you make. Like, that's how you do it. And I think part of this situation is he's seen Le'Veon Bell get the franchise tag. He's seen Bud Dupree get the franchise tag, right? He knows the Steelers have done this to people. And I think part of what we're seeing here is him being like, I'm not playing that game. You're not going to franchise tag me. I'm just going to let you know now. I'm just going to sit here. Like, I know you want to re-sign me. I want to re-sign here. But I'm just kind of letting you know it's going to happen, or you're going to let me go. You're not franchise tag. I'm not playing that game. And I can't blame him. You're that good. If TJ Watt is sitting out a year, people don't realize how big of a loss that is. I don't want to get into that. That's stuff that won't happen. But to me, TJ Watt is going to get, I've been saying this for a long time, he's going to get $30 million a year. Someone was saying he's going to sign for like 24. If he signs for 25 or less, build a statue of him the next day. Like, have a statue there, put balloons
ready to go.
Banner. Every time he walks into the stadium, just have like a parade for him. If he signs for less than 25 million or less, he's going to get whatever he wants. If you put him on the free market and you let teams bid for him, like, it's insane. He would beat a lot of quarterbacks. That's it, because that's what he does on Sundays is he beats a lot of quarterbacks. So yeah, TJ Watt, you got to sign him. You got to take that. You got to take that hit and understand that that's the cost of having a TJ Watt. The other option, and really, in all honesty, the Steelers are going to pay TJ Watt, because if you weren't going to pay TJ Watt, you sign Bud Dupree. You sign Bud Dupree for half of what TJ Watt's going to cost. You have another year of TJ Watt and Bud Dupree together, and then you let TJ Watt walk out into the sunset and go into free agency, and you get that comp pick. That's really the answer there. So
third rounder, yay.
Yeah. The Steelers, he's got to be a Steeler. It's just got to happen. It's going to be $30 million.
So, in my opinion, I feel like this deal basically is already done, and what they're trying to figure out is the guaranteed money, because this is not a deal the Steelers have ever negotiated, and you're not getting away with giving TJ Watt $0 guaranteed dollars. This is going to be like a lower level quarterback contract. Quarterbacks make $30 million, like a lower level quarterback's making $30 million a year. So I think what this is hung up on is like those dollars and cents of what that check for TJ is going to say on it the moment he puts pen to paper. So in my opinion, I think that's probably what the hang up is right now. If I had to guess, it'll be like a 5-year, $150 million extension. That's my guess. And then whatever the guaranteed money kind of just works out the way that those average years go after that. So that's kind of my kind of prediction on it. I think 5 years is probably exactly what the player would want, because that would also mean he gets one more payday. And then the franchise, of course, you get 5 years of arguably the best defensive player in football. And really, I guess you can always argue for Aaron Donald, but at the end of the day, it's how contracts work. The next guy up is going to reset the market. That's just the way it goes. But I'm curious whether or not you care about TJ Watt sitting out of these contact drills, or if that means absolutely nothing.
I don't really. I don't think he's a guy that really needs preseason the way he plays. I don't think he needs too much practice. And it gives guys a chance. It gives Melvin Ingram. It gives Alex Highsmith. It gives everyone a bit more time to play. That's beneficial. because they're actually going to rotate in. It's not like when Ben sits out and we get to watch, guys who aren't going to be the future of the Steelers franchise fight over who's number 2. That's, like whatever. These guys are actually going to play during the season. Cassius Marsh, if he's the guy who makes it, he's going to play. If Quincy Roche is there, he's going to play. They're going to be on the field, right? If you're number 4, even if you're number 5, if you are on the Steelers active roster, you are going to play in games. Not every game, but you're going to make it. You're going to get in a game.
I cringed because you mentioned the name of who should not be spoken of. Of course, the Marshman, the Marshmallow. Maybe that's what we should go with because he's soft against the run. Ew, I just came up with that one. I'm going to use that in an article if he makes a team. Anywho, there's another guy that's looking for an extension and someone that I think both of us are very, very high on and something that I think both of us were hoping would happen before the season so the Steelers could have a little bit more walking around money. Mr. Joe Haden wants to retire a Pittsburgh Steeler. Now, some people are like, 32-year-old corner, how could you sign him now? But Joe Haden has not lost a step. Like, seriously, that guy played as good as ever in 2020. And really, he looks like he's in tip-top shape once again. Geoffrey, are you all for it? I think I know the answer to this already, but are you all for a Joe Haden extension getting done shortly thereafter TJ Watts gets done?
Absolutely. I don't know if they do it this year. They may not do it this year, but this could just be like, let's get it in the works. Let's get the talks going so that we don't have to hit free agency next year. We don't have to go through that drama. Joe Haden should absolutely be a Pittsburgh Steeler. He played, I think he is 26 games away from being a Pittsburgh Steeler, playing in more games for the Steelers than for the Browns. We have to hit that number.
Yes.
Like, we have to. He can't, like, if he plays one more season and then he leaves, he was a Brown. Like, he was a Brown more than he was a Steeler. I want to swing that. I want to swing that because I want to be like, hey, Cleveland, remember Joe Haden, the best defensive back you've had in, like, forever? Yeah, he's a Steeler. He's not really a Brown. He's a Pittsburgh Steeler. People have talked about him playing. The Steelers have seen this before. Deshae Townsend played till he was 34. He was 33 in 2008. He made a pick 6 to beat Dallas. Like, this is the kind of player Joe Haden can be. He's a much better player than Deshae Townsend ever was, right? Joe Haden is that guy. You play him at starting cornerback until he can't play that anymore. And then when he can't play that anymore, you put him in the slot. And there you go. He plays that for a bit, and then he's done. You keep him because he can do that. Similar to how Hines Ward went out in his old age. Like he could still get it done. Joe Haden doesn't depend on his foot speed. He's got – I always say he has got the old man savvy. He knows how to get away with fouling people without getting caught. You will see him hold people, and it doesn't look like he's doing anything. But you get a close-up, and he's got, like, their jersey, like, death grip on it. And he's just holding them back. He's just like, nope, you're not going. And they're like, what? And the ref's like, I didn't see anything. Joe Haden's that dude. Like, Joe Haden can get it done. He's fantastic leader, fantastic guy. Everyone loves him. And when he goes into the Hall of Fame, he needs to be wearing a Pittsburgh Steelers jersey.
Yeah, and for people that don't think Haden's a Hall of Famer, I feel like his contract extension will probably look for something like 3 more years, get him to 15 years. For a corner to be good for that long, like, think of the great corners of the last 20 years. Like, Darrelle Revis, the first one that pops to mind. What was his top? Like, 4 years? He was unbelievable for 4 years. Richard Sherman, 5? And a half, maybe? Yeah. Joe Haden, when all said and done, he'll have 15 years, and from the way he's played, it'll be 15 solid years. That's one of the reasons why he'll have a shot. Also, he's Joe Money for a reason. This next contract will make him the highest paid defensive back in the history of football for career earnings.
Yeah,
I don't really expect this guy to be making a really kind of a debilitating salary cap number. I wouldn't be surprised if he took a pay cut as well. Do you think he'd be making the same amount of money he is now?
I don't believe he will. I don't actually think he will. I even think with this statement, he's kind of giving the Steelers a bit of leverage on that contract to say, hey, you know what? If you want to retire a Steeler, you're going to have to do something for us. You know, you've made your money.
$150 million. Yeah.
You've made your money. Yeah.
To be a rookie the year before that
really
CBA came down. Oh man, that must sting for like that rookie class the next year. I can't remember when it switched over, like 2011 maybe. But what a just kick to the wallet, going from being a top 10 pick, making $100 million to like 30. Still a lot of money. I would love $30 million, but still that's a considerable drop off. But Joe Haden, he contract hopefully soon to be completed. I guess
so. Like honestly, I think we could probably get him 5 or 6 a year. I think we could get him that low, and that would be phenomenal.
You can't complain with that. And the salary cap's going to grow exponentially each and every year from here on out. This year's stadiums will be full again. The revenue's up. These new TV deals, like I'd be shocked. I know the league set the cap at $208 million as the ceiling for the salary cap next year. It's got to hit that. I'd be stunned if it didn't. I really would be stunned. So $5 million for a guy like Joe Haden, sign me up. I know we're rapidly approaching the top of the hour here, so to wind things down for this show, I'm going to throw out some of the competitions in training camp thus far, and I want you to give me who you think is the kind of clubhouse leader here. First and foremost, the backup quarterback spot. Who would you say at this point is QB2 in Pittsburgh?
Mason Rudolph.
Is number 3 Dwayne Haskins, or is Josh Dobbs playing nice football? Okay. Could all
I expect it to stay that way through the end of the season. I think they have more of a long-term plan for Haskins than get him going this season kind of thing.
And plus that RFA year that the Steelers get him for as well. He's going to cost peanuts next year. So he'll be back. Just before we move on to the next guy, Josh Dobbs. Could the Steelers hang on to 4? Could he be that vet practice squad addition and just hope he doesn't get poached?
I don't think so.
Oh, really? Wow. So he's gone.
I don't think Josh Dobbs sticks around.
Oh, sorry, Ben. Another one of your buddies.
I think it's one of those things, Mike, they like him, so they bring him into camp, give him a shot, let him show himself. Nobody else is picking him up. Like, let him do something, let him show. There's no reason for them to bring in, another Devlin Hodges type guy. They've got the depth they need.
Right, gotcha. Now, these other ones we can go through a little bit faster here because I think there is a lot of spots still up in the air. Inside linebacker number 3.
I think it's going to end up Marcus Allen.
Really? Number 3?
I don't like it. I don't like it. Yeah, but Ulysses Gilbert III always ends up playing himself into the doghouse. He always looks flashes, and then other things he just doesn't have it. So I think that'll go probably. Yeah.
For me, I think the Steelers are going to go rookie heavy this year. I think Buddy Johnson ends up as the 3rd inside linebacker. That's my opinion.
It would be nice.
It would be nice. We certainly need it. Nickel corner.
I think they're not going to do what I think they should do. But what I think will happen is probably Millette. I think you're going to see Arthur Millette take that over.
Wow.
I'm not sold on Antoine Brooks yet. He has some liabilities. People thought Mike Hilton wasn't good in coverage. Mike Hilton's a lot better in coverage than what we're going to get from a Antoine Brooks Jr.
Okay, this is a fun one. Hopefully Jeff Hartman's tuned in. Punter.
Do we have 2 punters?
Yeah, who's the other guy?
I don't know. MV Press.
Yes.
MVP. NFL MVP this year.
I tell you what.
On Presley Harvin III.
Not to put the cart before the horse, but if Presley Harvin makes this team, if Steeler Nation doesn't make him the Pro Bowl punter, I will be so disappointed in you. I will be leading that charge. Presley Harvin will make the Pro Bowl if he makes his team. Period.
We're going to vote all the times. All the votes.
Who's the defensive lineman that's getting cut?
Ooh, that's a harsh one.
It's a tough question. We've talked about it all off season long.
I'm sticking with Bugs.
That's someone's kind of like jumped at me for saying that, but I still think it's going to be Isaiah Buggs. He took that stupid penalty. He does those boneheaded things all the time. I think that sets him back a little bit. Mondo still plays special teams. Carlos Davis looked good.
Mondo was also the first guy in.
He
started. It was him and what's his face, Chris Wormley.
Yes. And Loudermilk looks good. I got a feeling it's Buggs. And you know what? I wouldn't shed a tear. I think there's smarter like football IQ on that defensive line, and that's the way I'd go about it. I'm really kind of the last one. I know Andrew Wilbar threw it in the live chat there, but wide receiver 5 / kick returner, punt returner. I think all things are relative there. Ray McLeod didn't take any kicks. I know he's still listed as the returner, but could Matthew Sexton be the guy? Could someone else be there? I know Busey's been turning some heads. There's the other receiver whose name is blanking me right now, but the Steelers kept him around off the
Anthony Johnson.
Yes,
recovered a fumble.
He did.
That was a beautiful recovery too. As a gunner, those make a mark, man. Those make a mark. That's how Robert Spillane stuck around. Man, that's a tough one. I'm gonna probably go with Sexton. I think he has a real shot to take out a Ray McLeod.
My kind of prediction with it, there'll be 3 running backs on the roster, and they flip that spot to wide receiver. They carry a 6th receiver. I think that's the way they go about it.
Oh, see, I have a different prediction there. I think it's 3 running backs too, but I think you might see second fullback.
Trey Edmonds.
I think Trey Edmonds may make the roster, and you'd see 3 tight ends. Like you see 3 tight ends, 3 running backs, 2 fullbacks.
Oh, you know what? Oh, now you just made me change my mind.
H-back is a big role.
I know
he looked pretty solid in it. That's actually my player to watch this one, to see where he plays, what time of game he actually gets in, because you have all those tight ends. You've got Rader, you've got Gentry, you've got all those guys in the fight. See where Edmonds comes in and plays H-back, because he was the number 2 receiver on the team in the Hall of Fame game. He was number 2 in receiving yards. Trey Edmonds. and from 2016 to 2019, he had the longest run by a running back.
That's pretty interesting.
Steelers. In 2019, he had a 40-some yard run. That was the longest one.
Oh, goodness. Okay, we are over time, but I feel like we need to bring this out here. This is my idea now that you mentioned the tight end spot. I think the Steelers really like Gentry and Rader. They're physical blockers. Okay,
the problem is watch when they have them move across the formation and block the other side. They're slow. And you can't be slow at that. Whoever wins that job between the 2 of them is going to be the guy who does that best.
What if they both win the job? And hear me out on this. There's one tight end that can't block. Could they possibly keep the guys that can block and move on from one Eric Ebron? Could they?
You've gone a little crazy here.
This is a spicy take. There's 3 guys that can block. The Steelers want their tight ends to block. He's a big wide receiver. Big wide receiver.
A little bit crazy. Little bit crazy there. That's not.
Geoff Hartman and myself had the same conversation. I thought to myself, wait a minute.
Not happening.
See, it's going to stew in the back of your brain now. No,
it's not going to.
Yes, it is.
No. Nuh-uh. Because he can play. Like, you know what would happen? He would still slide down and play H-back. You watch their mobility coming across in the weird motions and the different things they do. Rader and Gentry both are much better vertically oriented. Vertical blockers coming across, they're not as good, and that's a big part of that H-back role, which is where they're going to be playing. You're only going to have one tight end. You're going to have an H-back. So if the second tight end in has to move around.
Okay. We'll see. Maybe Pat Freiermuth ends up being this Travis Kelce type, like someone to just throw out there instantly.
That's you want someone to be excited for watching Freiermuth in this offense. See where they use him, how they move him around. Man, he could be a weapon.
I am excited for Pat Freiermuth. Yeah. For the first time ever, it feels like the Steelers have like an unbelievable tight end group and an unbelievable punter, and that's never been a case. Like I had that article, like the Steelers have 4 punters deep. It's a good one from Andrew Wilbar. I would love that, Mike, but that wouldn't happen. Ebron is just LeBron. minus the L. I guess you could throw the L in there though too, but
Eric L. Ebron.
Yeah, there you go.
Goodness me. Like a luchador mask. It'd be El Ebron.
I know he checks Twitter often, so maybe you can tag him in it and see how far that goes. Maybe you'll get blocked though. But anywho, we are at the top of the show. Geoffrey, is there anything you want to plug on our way out?
I don't know. I've done some things. I do stuff. Go look at the stuff that I do.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah, there was a Vertex today, was there not?
Yes, Vertex came out.
I know. What the hell? I didn't read it.
We talked about something in that. My mind is gone, dude. This is the Ebron thing. You've blown it up. Wow. But the Vertex was good. It was really good. What it was about, I don't remember. No, it was about Presley Harvin. We did Vertex, Dave and I, about Presley Harvin. It's the best article that's ever been written because it's about Presley Harvin III. So go read that. And also check out my new show, From the Cutting Room or the Cutting Room Floor. I got a great compliment. They said someone said it was like listening to NPR.
Wow.
So tune into my show, ladies and gentlemen, to hear the dulcet tones of Geoffrey Benedict talk about football. And
ladies and gentlemen, you will only get that wherever you get your podcasts. Those will not be available on YouTube or Facebook. There's like 34 podcasts a week coming out from behind the steel curtain.com. You'll get my live mic, Jeff Hartman's All Three Let's Rides, Steelers Stat Geek, the Steelers Power Half Hour, Touchdown Under. There's literally so many shows. I can't even name it. We added a ton of new hosts. There's stuff for everyone. If you don't like me, it doesn't matter. You can go check out Geoffrey's stuff or Jeff's stuff because we have a lot of Jeffs with the site for whatever reason. It's a theme. Just go check out the content. Is basically what I'm trying to tell you. We'll have more fun stuff after the game, of course, Thursday night with the Philadelphia Eagles, and some instant content that you'll only find on the podcast platform. So make sure you subscribe, leave 5 stars, like the video. Once again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in to the latest edition of Know Your Enemy. For my co-host, Geoffrey Benedict, my name is Michael Beck. We'll catch you guys next week, and here we go, Steelers. Hopefully they can knock off those Philadelphia Eagles. Good night, guys.